So throughout all these circles, we this element of witnessing, being in a now, you know, self-remembering, presence, mindfulness keeps coming. Um, just a moment, some thing here I need to do. Um, yeah, so this is the key practice and the element that brings about raising the level of consciousness and but this is not enough just to know about this and engage in it. It's important to know also more what's more like what to watch for, what to watch for. So this what I'm going to talk about is not my idea. uh, it appears in many teachings. I will use more primarily from this fourth way tradition, which came into the West in the 20th century through Gurdjieff and Ouspensky. But they are, it's an ancient teaching and it's useful. So the idea is that to understand more what we are dealing with and what's the process of falling asleep and then what's the process of waking up. Don't believe me. Try to be open, you know, and you and try to check for yourself. Try to verify, uh, and try to make it practical for yourself. So the idea is that somehow in the divine play of things, there's a consciousness gets this body, and then the body is born, and what we start with is this sense of consciousness, the being that we are, that is just aware. There are no thoughts for quite some time. It's more like sensations and maybe feelings, sounds. And so what we are born with is this consciousness and what is called in the fourth way our essence. Our essence is some innate qualities which range from, you know, the color of the skin, the type of hair, the future height and length and the sex and all that, but as well as some innate tendencies and innate talents, gifts, predisposition that the baby has and they will later unfold. So this is like, you know, it's the essence of a Chihuahua to be like a Chihuahua, and a German Shepherd is a slightly different essence, although they are both dogs. With dogs, it's more like we call them subspecies, but this is our own conceptualization. But with humans also, they are, um, everybody comes with different innate qualities that will manifest later. And this is what's true uh, for ourselves. You know, some is like athletic, somebody is more like a nerdy, somebody is good at music, somebody is more quiet, somebody is more social, you know. And you can see with kids that even before they are conditioned, they are slightly different flavors. And so that's our essence. Now, what happens is that, especially in the Western world and the civilized society, very early on, we start to downpour. We receive a pouring of programs and conditioning that come through, you know, society, through our peers, through our parents, through media, and so a lot of ideas and thoughts, how the world is and how to be and what's right, what's wrong. And then together with that comes the fact that the child imitates, you know, imitates uh, what's around it and copies the environment. And then we, without even knowing, get on all kind of tendencies and peculiarities of the adults in our environment. Um, we continue to adapt to the world, and we believe now things what we are told. The essence and consciousness at the beginning has no firewall. It's totally programmable with everything that it hears or believes. Then usually we some difficult events happen, or depends where we are raised in the family of origin or the environment. There is some things that are hurtful, uh, like abuse, or criticism, or neglect, or violence, or either we witness or we receive them, or erratic behavior from the adults. Is here, then is not here, coming, going, is drunk, uh, you know anyway. So all this, they all this downpouring of information that usually comes via thoughts, they create what is called personality. Actually, it creates a false personality. So something that we didn't have when we came with, but we start to develop this false personality. Uh, this this is a fourth way term, false personality, or another way I like to call it, it's called the imaginary picture of oneself. Somehow we believe to be like that, or this is who I am. And it starts kind of innocently with, oh, I'm Jimmy and I'm 6 years old and I'm whatever, I live in the city, but then it starts to have more and more information there in that identity. Basically, false personality, uh, persona from Latin is like a mask. Persona means mask. So it is something that is on top of the face, and somehow, but what happens is that due to the state of general sleep of humanity, and um, essence kind of usually stops growing, and education doesn't necessarily support essence, our inner talents and tendencies, and we are more like, now we are growing in personality, in this false personality, and this grows more and more and more. And in this false personality, we have now, as we become adults, all these belief systems. The world in a certain way. Uh, I am the deficiency story, being inferior or being superior, or feeling inadequate, or feeling uh, all kind of opinions about ourselves, um, all kind of beliefs about how things are, about people, beliefs about how the world should be, uh, and here we also start to have these adaptations to our environment. So we start to be now more, in order to be safe, we start to be very, let's say, people pleasing, or start to be very sweet and very likable, or we become actually very hard and guarded and kind of aggressive, controlling, trying to control other people or controlling the situation, um, feeling all this, having all these doubts. Um, in this false personality, all this stuff connected to self-criticism, the inner critic, the self-judgment, the judgment of other people, um, judgment of situations. So basically, this false personality, which is the same as what's called ego. But it's so much kind of ego that I want to keep it fresh and look at it in a different way. So basically, what happens is that the child now, somehow the presence is overlooked, and then instead of living in our presence and essence, we live in this kind of false growth. This is an outgrowth, like a construct, which is mostly mental. Is mental with ideas, and So what happens is that uh, this forms our identity. And so we, in sleep, and like most people, we start like that. I mean, everybody starts like that. We are identified as this false personality. And this false personality, it is the active force in our life. And often at the expense of our genuine interest and talents. So often the personality is in a certain way, which is very different than how we really are underneath, you know. Uh, and this happens all the time. Actually, whether we believe it or not, we start from being identified as our false personality, our imaginary picture of ourselves. And so all the thoughts that we have, most of the thoughts, they come from this imaginary picture and false personality. Um, Anything to do with um, judgment, judging ourselves or others, with how things should be, anything to do with any type of uh, deficiency belief about ourselves, anything to do with taking things personally, anything to do with so all this is like a whole what we call me later. This is what the this and this according to this work, this actually is not the real me, it's not the real I. This is the false personality, false identity that kind of it's like a parasite from one angle that took over the host, and then the host believes to be the parasite. Now, there's a whole world in itself, you know, and the innocence in this process, basically, we lose our, you know, the childlike freedom, spontaneity, being relaxed, being playful, being open. This is all gone, and it's all these constructs and all this inner chatter and voices, and of course, all these have a lot of feelings, you know. So there is the feeling aspect. Um, so this is the state of sleep, where we are in a state of being identified. Our presence, our consciousness is constantly identified with thoughts and feelings, and identified with the thoughts and feelings believing to be this personality. And then the personality is very sensitive. It's very, because it's actually false and fake, um, it is very identified what other people think about us and how we are perceived, and very much like sensitive to, oh, they don't respect me, what they think about me. And it's all about the common element is that this sense of identity is a sense of being separate, you know, be a sense of separate, where we feel completely separate from other people, completely separate from nature, separate from the universe, separate from God. And from one angle, we are separate, disconnected from ourselves, from our true self. So, um, so part of our work, and why I mention all this, is that not much progress can happen, real progress towards peace and awakening, unless we start to diminish the false personality in ourselves. Uh, as long as this continues to be active and to be active force in our life, there's no real growth. Often, false personality can be interested in the work, and then it's kind of using that to aggrandize or to juice or to be better or to improve itself or this or that. This is natural. So why I'm mentioning all this is that it's not enough to just be present and to be aware of thoughts and feelings and come into the now. It is important to start to know our false personality. You know, Socrates said, know yourself, know thyself. This is the highest wisdom, to know thyself. And this has two meanings. One is to, but in order to know our true self, this is somehow when personality is active like this, the false sense of me is active, the real self is hard to spot somehow. It's like as if it's not there, although it is there. It is our true self, which is in the hypnotism of false personality. So knowing thyself for a long time has to do with knowing our false identity. And what we are trying to do here is to become, to identify which is our particular false personality. They all come in different flavors. The whole false persona and the whole false identity is like a whole building, like a whole, elaborate building, which has one or two or three main pillars, which in the fourth way they were called like chief features, which would be very strong mechanical tendencies that are, whenever we are engaged in them, it feels very much like me, and we are the most asleep. So it is important to identify these chief mechanical tendencies. And then the work is to, instead of being it and this running the show, to become more aware and identify this false sense of I and false identity. And whenever possible, first, we can't stop it because this has been running our life. It is me. So this information is like, whoa, this is interesting, strange. But to start to know it more and more like a research project without judging it. It's important not to judge all these false constructs in ourselves, because that which judges the false personality is the false personality. So it's needed as a scientific, non-judgmental investigation, trying to know this so-called false personality, and just by the virtue of becoming aware of it, a lot of it, just by noticing it, some of it will collapse, because it's like with the rats or with the cockroaches, they can only be in the dark. As soon as you turn on the light, as soon as you are becoming present to certain behaviors, you're like, oh wow, it just stops by itself. Some of them are very persistent, so it's necessary to know them and to bringing awareness to resist them. Whenever we catch it, to like, all right, I'm not going there. This is false personality, I'm dropping it. So the more this diminishes through bringing more awareness and being told what to do, the more it kind of becomes more and more passive, gradually becomes more and more passive, less active. So then the benefit of that, first of all, false personality is always unhappy and miserable, and all the time is interested in controlling ourselves or others or reality, getting recognition, getting approval, getting this, getting that. Things need to be in a certain way, and this never going to work like that. So it's always unhappy, and it's always there's a sense of lack connected to it. Like, so it's trying to get somewhere outside and trying to be afraid of something, and it's all very. So the more it diminishes, actually, a lot of our self-created suffering diminishes. The more it diminishes, what happens is that our essence, the inner child, the true spontaneity, the true innocence, our true flower, because we actually like amazing divine creation, it starts to have space to grow, to be what we really are, and to start to do what we really are supposed to do. So, and from there, it goes more deeper towards diminishing false personality and having more presence into the system. Gradually, more and more, we also later identify our true self. So there's this kind of switching from being in the false identity, snapping out of it, being what we are, falling asleep again, going into false identity. So this will be a constant kind of switching back and forth, but the ratio will gradually change. So false personality diminishes more and more. We are much more in our free, spontaneous nature, which already is more happy, more free from worries and pressures. Also, false personality uses the mind, the intellect. So that's why we have so many thoughts all the time when we start to work, because and a lot of them are useless, and it's about me and about other people. And this is false personality hijacking our intellect. And then it's getting rotten and our intellect is kind of torturing us. As false personality diminishes, there's more awareness in the system. The mind now goes back to being a very good tool, because the mind, the thoughts, it's a great ability that animals don't have. So it can be they say the mind is a very bad master, but a great servant. Anyway, this is a large topic and we'll go into it more and more, but what's important is to make it more practical for ourselves and to start to identify what type of flavor false personality has in us, and start to notice it and to gather more and more observations. The more we are aware of it, the less power it has over us. It doesn't happen overnight. Anything to do with, you guys probably heard of this book, or if you haven't, I recommend The Four Agreements. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. This is an easy path that is meant to diminish false personality. Anything to do with the Four Agreements, where being one is to be impeccable with the word, meaning to be very careful, like the words we say or the words in our head. So it's kind of pure, true, and not negative. So anything to do with judgment of others, of ourselves, criticism, gossip, negative talk, any to do with reactivity to other people and all that, it is our false personality doing that. Taking things personally, whatever is happening out there, the traffic and this, whatever, it's about me, making assumptions. So all these are coming from this false personality. Anything to do with this inner critic that talks shit about us, that whips us, that tells us. So this is false personality, basically. Anything to do with I'm not good enough, I'm flawed, I am self-pity, self-deprecation, as well as the inflated version, feeling superior, feeling better than these guys that don't know, I know. It's kind of the same aspect. It's a different, the same vanity it's called, but there's the inflated version, the deflated version. Anything to do with what other people think about us and trying to have a good impression. And so this is more like, in this talk, is more like a broad, anything to do with lying to ourselves, lying to others, anything to do with these beliefs of, what we call limiting beliefs, core negative image. These are examples of our false personality. So this is a broad talk, and I would like to give a little bit of the map. Yeah, in order to start to work in the right way, to identify these tendencies without judging them, catch them the best we can, and whenever possible to kind of just come back to being present and resist them. you know, and they will, it's like with the black wolf and white wolf story. If we don't feed them and we keep being them, and with this element of self-remembering, witnessing work, we stop the supply, basically. Um, yeah, the bad news is very strong. It's very mechanical. It is very much took us, and we believe to be it. The good news is that it's not real. It's not really what we are. And underneath what we are is actually very powerful, very intelligent, divine, loving, peaceful being that is God's being. So God is on our side, basically. In the fourth way and in other traditions, they this thing like as whenever you work with awareness, mindfulness, or this type of stuff, it's important to create a division within oneself between I and Uspensky, the guy from the fourth way, was saying you have to write the right division of oneself between I and Uspensky, or like I and Mihai. So initially, Mihai, it's all false personality. So we call an I is that which is aware and that which perceives it, and the part of us that is interested in the work. So this is the only one we can trust. Everything else is a bunch of lies and a bunch of fake stuff. We're not bad that we have it. It's unavoidable. It's part of the how it works here, and it's part of the path. So to start to observe, you know, Lisa or Daniel, to be aware of Daniel, to be present, aware of Daniel, watching our thoughts and feelings, and gradually, and we'll do this other times and go into this, to identify which are my thing that the Velcro thoughts, usually the most suffering is where we have our chief pillar of false identity that we need to discover for ourselves. Some people have this fear, this feel about fear, how they will perceive me, how like this. Usually we can see it in others pretty well. Other people have this thing like the controlling, to be in control all the time or in charge. Other people is to appear in a certain way, to be liked. Other people is self-pity. Other people that always some anyway, it comes in different flavors. So part of our, this is some work of purification, let's say, in order to get to what we really are and be that. It's necessary to start to clean up the house. And the metaphor in these teachings that the sun is already there. You know, the sun is already there. We don't need to create the sun. We don't need to create the true self. We don't need to create our real identity. The sun is already there. It's just covered by clouds. And even when there are these deep clouds, the sun is still there. And our work is not to create the sun, it is to gradually remove the clouds, you know? And as more clouds fall off, the sun, which was there, will start to shine more and more, you know? So this practice of self-remembering, witnessing, being aware, uh, is very much the way to go, to observe these aspects of ourselves with self-remembering, bring awareness to them, and get this conscious control through awareness. Without being more aware, more conscious, more witnessing, there's nothing we can do. It's just false personality fighting false personality in itself, false personality trying to improve itself from the false. So it's a losing game. So I will stop here for now, and I can open it to any questions or clarifications about this or anything else connected with what we have been talking all along. I'll just pause this one.